Like, why do I feel like I have 75 one-on-one clients right now? You're a chicken running around with your head cut off. I can tell you it's at scale chaos. You then get really burnt out because you feel like I can never catch up. We really don't have a happy medium. You're going to one extreme or the other. Is there actually a happy medium? There is absolutely a way to make a customized offer still feel scalable. Hello, and welcome back to the Ambitious Podcast. Today, we are talking about all things scaling a one-to-many offering. And this is something that I really want to be sure to break down in depth. Like, I'm talking for the next hour we are going to spend together in a nitty-gritty detail, because I think, as somebody myself who literally helps people all day, every day to scale their business, one of the things that many people come to me with is the desire to be able to scale, but in the pursuit of that scaling, not wanting to feel like they're losing their soul in the process. And what I mean by that is, if they have intimacy with clients, in the sense of you're working with them in a pretty intimate capacity, a one-on-one capacity, a customized capacity, and then you think to yourself, I'm going to take this knowledge, I'm going to take this process, and I'm going to scale it. Many believe that in order to do that, I have to basically make everything completely standardized. Everything has to be cookie cutter and blueprint. And I don't want to do that. And so often, then it comes to this place where either they feel pulled in one of two directions. They feel pulled in the direction of either A, I have to make it cookie cutter, or I have to make it blueprint, or the other side, meaning if I don't do that, I'm going to get stuck in tons of one-on-one client work and I'm not going to feel like I can ever scale. Is there actually a happy medium? And today I want to literally break down exactly how we achieve that happy medium, because there is absolutely a way to make a customized offer still feel scalable. And many people just don't know how to do that. So in the next hour, I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that. And again, this is something that I would say comes up probably minimum twice to three times a week, because as I work with people in their product suites, and if I work with them within, even just thinking of the vision of their business, sometimes I map out, what's the financial goals. And I would say, well, what if we made this offer a one to many? And they're like, no, I can't do that, because if I do, then all my clients will get put into a blueprint and I don't want it to be cookie cutter. It keeps coming up. And it really does present, and it kind of brings awareness to the fact that so many of us believe that scaling has to look one way. And I think this is just a prime example of that, because so many businesses will see other businesses, meaning you've seen another mastermind, or you've seen another group offer, or you've seen another, cohort style program. And you think to yourself, well, if that's how I have to run this in order to scale it, I don't want to do that. So I first want to invite you to kind of go into today with like a blank slate. Try to remove any bias you have of maybe how you've been taught. This is the only way you can do business. Maybe you're thinking of that other group offer or mastermind that you've once been part of. And instead, I want to kind of invite you into a new model where you really can have the best of both worlds, where you can have, people consistently joining in an evergreen model. You could have people joining in a cohort where they all start at the same time and they're done at the same time. And you can also have customization while also not feeling like everything is completely chaotic, because it's all customized and everything is starting from scratch. So let's break down really how we do this. You want to offer customized support, but you also don't want to feel like you're a chicken running around with your head cut off. So we really are typically presented with these two paths, right? We've got the one size fits all, or the blueprint, and then we have the fully custom. Everything is different per client, and you feel like you're constantly kind of, starting from scratch. Here's the problem with the one size fits all. When we think group, or when we think blueprint, or we think, anything structured, we oftentimes think that something's going to get watered down, that we're going to get a product or a program that feels like it's very basic. And with this, that it's not really going to be tailored to the individual group or their needs. On the contrast, we then think about, okay, well, what if I go fully custom per client? And I can tell you it's at scale chaos. And it's also very unpredictable, because you're doing different things per individual that you're working with. It's really difficult to scale because you are reinventing the wheel every time. And then as a result of the fact that you feel like you're constantly creating, you're constantly starting from scratch, you then get really burnt out because you feel like I can never catch up, because I feel like I'm constantly trying to create a strategy for this person, create a deliverable for this person, and everything feels like, why do I feel like I have 75 one-on-one clients right now? That is because we really don't have a happy medium. You're going to one extreme or the other. It's very black and white thinking, right? So when we look at the cookie cutter and probably what you know, you're probably going to be able to use a couple indicators to tell you, do you maybe even have right now a cookie cutter program? Or maybe you yourself have been part of a cookie cutter program. So you feel like there's endless modules. Like you are like, I am just being put through the ringer of modules. It's like one training, one video, one masterclass, if you will, after another. And there's no deliverables that help you to get direction around integration. So it's not like it's being accompanied by worksheets or templates or prompts that allow you to take that principle and actually integrate it. You also feel like everyone is doing the same thing. So if you go into a call or you go into talking maybe to a peer in the program, or maybe you're doing this in your own offer right now, is that everyone kind of gets the same blueprint. Everyone does it the same way, no matter what stage you're at, no matter what industry you are, no matter what kind of brand you are. Everybody does the same thing. And with this, you're going to see that like the beginners and the advanced clients are typically going to end up in the same program. Or you feel like, why am I, if you're more advanced in your progress towards your goal, why am I feeling like I'm doing the exact same thing as the person who's, say 2 years behind me or two stages behind me? And so, with this, because you have the same blueprint and it's all based around these modules, there's a lot of over focusing on the curriculum. It's all about the curriculum. Like, did you do this? Did you do this? It's always about just, did you do the step? Did you do the step? And you feel almost like you've seen, or maybe you've been part of, a experience where you need coaching, you need direction, and they don't consider the individual context. They always go back to, well, did you go to the steps? Did you do the stages? Did you follow through the milestones, right? It's always about the curriculum, and it feels almost overly focused on the curriculum versus the actual coaching of you, or for example for you, for your clients. There's also typically this really big disconnect that you're going to feel between the different types of support. So you might feel like you have clarity in the module, but then you bring it to a call and it doesn't feel clear on how to integrate it. And then you have questions and you feel like you're not sure how the module and the coaching on the call tied into this one-on-one. And then you're messaging in Slack and it's all feeling just disconnected and discombobulated. Like it's really just everything support wise doesn't feel like it connects. There's no larger vision of how all these pieces fit into a big vision for the program. And then you've got the no previous preparation. I would say it's considered to be the Q&A program, which basically means that the leader or the facilitator is not able per person to really get a understanding of who should be working on what, who should be completing what outcomes or what exercises. There's not really a quarterback type feeling with the facilitator. It's very much like a, yeah, come to these sessions if you have a question. Other than that, I don't know anything that you're working on or what you're doing. Versus potentially having someone who comes in and if you don't have a question, can say, great, well, then where are we at with A, B, and C? You also will feel like oftentimes if you've been in one of these programs that's cookie cutter, or you feel like you maybe even have one, is that you are feeling like you have to serve everybody everywhere. Like it really feels like you're trying to just fill all of the gaps. And oftentimes we see these programs that are cookie cutter designed to be able to take massive loads of people through them. Like we're talking, masterminds that probably have to the tune of anywhere between like 40, 50 people potentially inside. And that's because it really is a production line. It is a come in the front door, follow the curriculum. We just keep pushing you back to the curriculum and then get you out the back, right? Like it's really, there's not a lot of customization to it. And I will tell you myself, I have, invested in many different programs, many different coaches, many different experiences. And I myself have been part of these experiences where it is very cookie cutter. And, myself, I will say, I think part of what allowed me to flex that muscle as a business coach was helping me to kind of teach myself, if I'm gonna be honest. I would take somebody's curriculum or I would take their material and I would then use a critical eye or a kind of a critical brain to go through and say, okay, great, where can I find myself within this? So I'm going to leave that strategy because that's not really what I want to do for my business. I'm going to take that strategy because it is what I want to do for my business. And so I always joke there was an experience that I had that really, like, even though I didn't use their materials as like kind of, directly maybe as they were intended, I actually really don't regret that program at all because I think that program really helped me to be able to understand how I think and how I want to operate and how I want to run my business. And so it really was these experiences though that made me realize that I never want to do a cookie cutter program, like ever. Like I'm just not interested in scaling my business that way. And I always liked the idea of custom. I liked the idea of being able to integrate. I liked the idea of feeling like I could find myself in the strategy and it wasn't just this kind of handed to me thing. But I also recognize, as many people do, well, how do we scale that? What does that look like? And so even when I was scaling my own mastermind, which is the ITI Accelerator Mastermind, this 6-month mastermind is designed in the way in which I'm going to break down, which is the fact that you guys often hear me talk on this podcast, on social media, about principles. The mastermind is created with principles. So it means that the woman beside you on a call is not doing the exact same thing as you because the areas she's looking to refine in her business may be different than the ones that you're refining. But in each of the buckets of business, in marketing, in sales, in team, in brand, there are some kind of core pillars that we do need to know. And that's because those really help us to have clarity of what we need to do for ourselves. The principles are the same, but the execution is different. So I'm going to give you an analogy of kind of how I want you to think about this hybrid of a scalable yet customizable program. So I want you to think about Starbucks. I actually don't know if you know this about me, but I used to work at Starbucks for like 2 weeks. It was a very small amount of time because I realized I didn't want to do that. And so when I worked at Starbucks, they train you on how to make drinks. Well, the thing is, if you go to a Starbucks and you order your pumpkin spice latte at one location, and you order your custom pumpkin spice latte at a different one, you will, generally speaking, get the same product. So when you order a custom drink in Toronto versus in New York, you should, generally speaking, get the same flavor, the same product delivered to you when the drink is made. That is because Starbucks has perfected this exact model we're teaching today, which is how to have a streamlined through line of your framework while also allowing customization. That's why, really truthfully, Starbucks broke the brain of the coffee industry because you can get soy, you can get almond milk, you can get oat milk, you can get extra hot, you can get kids temp, you can get light whip, lots of whip, no whip. Like there's all these customizations. So if Starbucks had all the customizations and they didn't have a framework or they didn't have a structure from which to do that, it would be complete chaos. The barista would take 7 minutes to make each drink because they don't know what they're doing. There's no starting point. But when I worked at Starbucks, what I really realized and learned is there really is a system. There is an equation, and built into the equation, they allow customization. So, for example, when you get a pump of syrup in your Starbucks, they literally count it out as they pump it. They go short, short, tall, grande. So that becomes the equation that you keep talking until basically you get to the size of the drink that you want. So if, for example, it's a short drink, it's 2 pumps. If it's a tall drink, it's short, short, tall. It's 3 pumps. So then you really start to see how the drink they want is built into an equation. Then you've got, for example, the temperature. Well, that really comes down to the steaming stage of the milk. And that's where they then say, great, cross-reference the temperature. What temperature do we want? It's built into the structure of the offer. It's built into the product. And I love this analogy because it really shows us that this obviously, as we know, Starbucks, it can be made at scale. This is not something that you're going to see only in a very, small boutique business. This is something that can be done on a massive scale. And the reason that that's possible is because of these principles. So, I want to break down the 3 core categories that you need to be aware of if you want to have a product or an offer that is streamlined to scale, but also allows fluidity and customization for the consumer. The first is what we consider to be the spine. The spine of an offer is considered to be the signature framework. So it's really the non-negotiable principles, structure, framework, outline that really acts as the bumper lanes for the strategy. It keeps everything in line and it keeps everything consistent. If you are someone who does not have a signature framework, do not worry. We have a separate training that is all about signature frameworks. And so that training is in a whole other podcast. So if you search signature framework underneath ambitious, you will see an entire training that breaks down how to build one of those. So head over there if you don't have a signature framework. But we want to start first with the spine. The spine, again, is those bumper lanes that's based around your framework. Those act as a guide around how every client or every person is going to go through your experience or transformation. Now, two, then we have what's considered to be the flex, which is the personalized application of those. Okay, so we've got the spine, which is the framework. And then phase two is actually adding an integration of how somebody can take that framework and put that into personalized application for themselves. And then you've got the third stage, which is the touch points. These are really understanding how will you, in your execution of the principles and helping people to integrate them, how will you support people in doing that? Will you do that through modules? Will you do it through templates, through exercises, through quizzes, through one-on-one calls, Slack channels? There's a million and one ways that you can do that. But we want to understand, how can we ensure that the supports are designed to meet people with what they need to help them get clarity and to help them make progress? So I want to start with the spine because the spine is step one. If you do not have a signature framework, you shouldn't even be in the stage of thinking about making it into an offer. Because what it means is if you're trying to go one to many and you don't have a framework, you don't have a rinse and repeat anything. You really are completely custom because there's no system to even put anybody into. So because of that, we can't possibly make a one-to-many offer if you don't have a core principle, curriculum, framework that you can use as the backbone of what you're going to do. So we first need the spine, which is that framework, okay? So you want to be able to answer, what is the transformation? What are the steps? So I almost think about, if you can visualize for yourself, on the left-hand side is the start point. On the right-hand side is the end destination. And I almost want you to think about milestones. So I don't want you to think about every single step. I want you to think about milestones that someone needs to make, ideally, to help you to know that they're on track. Okay, so if I am, for example, on a road trip and I want to get to, I don't know, California, I would want to know that I'm at X place by X time. That tells me that we're at the quarter point of the drive. We're at the halfway point. We're 3/4 of the way there. It will really help you to see how you're making progress to the destination. We need one of those within your signature framework. You must have a process from which you go from point A to point B. So we want to look at, in each of those milestones, right? In each of those phases. So maybe you have, phase one is clarity, phase two is creation, phase three is conversion, phase four is community. Okay. So if we think about clarity, we want to say, and again, this is a random framework that I'm using as an example, but if we want to think about clarity, you have to be able to ask yourself, what is the outcome of that? So if someone in your mind has achieved the bucket of clarity, what does that mean? What does that look like? How would we identify that someone has achieved that or that they've done that? If we can't really quantify or describe how somebody has achieved that, then they can't themselves, or you as the facilitator, know with confidence that they should go to phase two. And that's where people get lost, because they feel like they're doing all of these things, but they don't necessarily know what they're mastering. They definitely don't know what they're making progress through. So you want to be able to understand, what are the milestones. So for example, I'm just going to break down a couple ways that you can visualize this. Maybe you have a 3-step journey. Okay. So it's all about these 3 phases. So you got clarity, phase 2, let's just say, is build, and then phase 3 is scale. So that's like the 3 phases that someone during your program will go through. You also might have core pillars, meaning you might have this structured based off topics. So maybe one topic is mindset, another topic is strategy, and then another topic is systems. So maybe it's not about phases, but it's more a matter of mastery of certain subjects. Okay. You can also, in each of these, regardless of how you structure it, whether it's about the topic or a certain phase you want them to complete, we have to have an outcome. We have to have a way to be able to understand and know that this person has reached a milestone, that they've achieved some aspect of a certain outcome. So with this is really important because it has everybody anchored to the same journey, but they might take it a little bit differently. So it helps to simplify your delivery. It helps to really not make you feel like you're constantly reinventing the wheel. And you can also structure a lot of content around this in your program. You can structure calls around this, and you can also structure a lot of your feedback around it. And it really, the feedback portion, I will say, is so important because oftentimes people will come to me and they'll say, I have this offer and I'm coaching people and I'm giving them direction and I'm giving them guidance. But then I feel like I give them direction or I give them guidance, but they don't necessarily take my advice. Like I feel like they're constantly scrambling. They constantly feel confused. They don't know what to do. They're just asking random questions, or I'm giving them advice and coaching and they're not integrating it. What do I do? And oftentimes, this is because you're giving feedback in such a way that's not really in reference to anything. So, how I explain this to clients is like if you think about the analogy of kids, if you say to a kid that you want them to do something with no reason to do it, you're like, just do it because I say so, right? Like, that's just take my advice and go run with it and don't ask me a second question. The way to get a child to usually listen to you is to root it into something that's a principle that you can then have as repetition and consistency. So let's just take a very basic one. If you tell your kids to say please and thank you, right? You might say that there's the two words we always say to people when we're talking to them. What are they? And you're like, please and thank you. Okay, great. So then they have a moment, 2 weeks later, because something comes up, they don't say please or thank you. You're like, what are the 2 words? And you're like, please and thank you. You're like, okay, great. Another moment comes up. What are the 2 words? So what you're doing is you're cross-referencing the feedback to something that you've anchored into them. It allows people to constantly make connections between behavior and principle. And they need that principle to anchor the behavior into. Because if you just focus on the behavior coaching and you say, make sure you say please. Okay, great. Make sure you say thank you. Okay, great. If you're just asking these random things and there's no context as to why, there's no anchor as to a framework, there's no principle or value to root into, you find that you're just giving constant feedback and you feel like nobody's listening to you. And that's because, frankly, they don't have what they need to listen to you. So when we see people who feel like they're doing lots of coaching, but the clients aren't getting movement, it's often because they're actually not coaching in reference to their framework. They're just coaching on random situations. So you want to start to, when you coach people, give them coaching in reference to the frameworks that they're going through and the frameworks that they're learning with you. That's the fastest way and the easiest way to be able to ensure that they get your principle and start to integrate it. The other thing that I also want to look at is then, how does this tie into your content? Maybe you have the content inside of your offer organized based on these phases or pillars. Maybe you have your team might be divided based on these, right? So, like, even for me, my team inside of our mastermind is divided based off of our curriculum, which is that there's mindset stuff that gets covered by the mindset coach. There's also systems and operations things that get covered by the systems and operations coach inside, who's a specialist in that. Like, these are things that get covered by certain people because that's how we've broken down our framework. So you really do want to think about, how can we use the material of the program to help with support, content, team, feedback, all of those different things. So, with this, you want to remember this is the anchor. This is the core. This is the structure upon which everything else is going to be created. So, again, this is why it's really important that if you don't have a framework, that's the first place we have to start. And that's because the framework really is the anchor of all of the rest of the pieces. So, the other thing that I also want to look at then is step 2, which is the flex, which is, again, remember, the personalized application of that curriculum. This is where the customization comes in. So the customization is going to come in because you want to ask yourself, what are non-negotiables in my process Where can clients personalize, interpret, and explore based off of their goals? So you want, for example, to have the ability for people to find themselves within it. I think that's one of the core customization pieces. When you have a cookie cutter type of curriculum, by contrast, everybody just starts at step one. And the reality is, when we join programs or when we, create programs, there are going to be people who have some of the foundational work done and they don't need to focus on step one. Maybe they've already done that. So when you have a cookie cutter program, and even what I've seen with, people that I've spoken to who've been inside these programs, they got put through weeks of work. Like, I'm talking weeks of modules and training and Q&A and all of these things. They've been put through the ringer of this work, even though they already had it developed. They already had the foundations. They already had those pieces established, and yet they had to go through it because that was the cookie cutter. These are the steps you follow. You never skip a step. So one aspect of customization automatically that you can go into is to say, can I maybe help people to self-identify with a certain stage to be the way that they discover which one is best for them, right? Like, so do we want to have everyone go through every stage, or do we want to actually maybe say, okay, great, we'll do an assessment and see which stage is actually most fitting for you? We also, with that, then might add different homework for people when they're starting, because they are starting at a different stage, right? They're not all starting at stage one because they're maybe too advanced or a little bit further ahead. So we're starting them at stage two. Therefore, their action items will be different. Their homework will be different. It's something that will allow that person's journey to be really tailored to them. You also want to think about, how can we use our resources to make decisions? So, for example, our framework is attract, convert, deliver, automate, and expand. So you'll hear, if you listen to it slowly, attract, convert, deliver. What it means is that I am not going to think about anything deliver, meaning your offers, until I know that you have adequate traffic and marketing. Why is that? Because I don't want to make tons of time into an offering when we have no interest in it. Or if you're like, I really want to focus on my offer, but you have no sales, you have no interest in conversions or conversations, or you're losing sales every day that you're having conversations for people who would have been interested in that offer. I want to look then at sales, which is to say, okay, great, let's look at marketing first, check. Then we go to sales, check. Then we go to delivery. And I do that because my model is also broken into a decision tree, which means that we need to keep the lights on in any business, right? So a lot of the time, I know when people scale, they oftentimes want to really dive into like ClickUp and the back end and brand and team development and SOPs and like, websites and all these things, like all this complexity. And what I look at is to say, are you attracting people that you want to be working with consistently? And of the people you're attracting, are you converting them consistently? I will not talk about anything else in your business until we make sure that that is happening in some capacity, or you have a plan that you're integrating to make it happen. Why is that? Because it means if we don't have leads and if we don't have sales, why would we ever focus on everything behind the curtain that none of those people can see? It means that you will, in short order, 30 to 90 days, you will not have income coming in to make any of what you're creating even make sense or matter. So it really means we need to keep the front end burning to make sure that anytime we focus on anything back end or behind the curtain that people can't see, that we have leads that are coming in. So you'll see my framework is also not only designed in buckets and phases, but it's also broken down to help be a decision tree. So it's something that helps you to understand what you focus on when and why. And in each of these buckets, you can also go through them again. So it means that you can, for example, have a core marketing channel and a core sales process and a core offer. And once you go through those, you set up systems and you make sure it's all dialed behind the scenes. You can go back to the front and do it again for TikTok and go back to the front and do it again for your podcast. It's meant to be cyclical. So it's a never ending journey that they know when they've got this all done, what should they do next? They go back through and they master the next level of principles. You'll see that there's intention around this. It's not about slapping a bunch of random words together and a bunch of random phrases. This needs to really be built into something that is the core and the center of your curriculum. And that's what allows people to customize underneath it. You also, within each of these, one of the things that I know, and I had an experience years ago, someone said to me that they were, inside of an offering and they said, I am somebody who's not a auditory learner. And they were not somebody that found that they could really integrate information unless they had something to integrate that information. And so what we found was that when I asked them about the experience, they said, yeah, everything is video. There's no resources at all to integrate literally anything. And so when we started to flush that out, I realized there's this aspect of integration that a lot of programs are missing, which is that you believe that because you record videos or because you have a slide deck even, that that means that every person who's ever consumed it digested that information and found it helpful and integrated it. Not necessarily. And this is also kind of as a side note why I believe heavily in the feedback of programs, because I think that you need to ask your clients what would be most helpful for you. What am I missing basically? Is there anything that I'm missed the mark on that maybe you need or that would assist you in integrating? And so what I really want to look at with the flex portion and personalizing it is you can only give custom feedback. You can only give custom coaching based off of something you have to reference. If you don't have anything to reference, you're basically just randomly coaching, which is what creates that chaos type feeling. So, this is also really impactful for the clients, by the way, because it also helps the clients to feel like you see them, to feel like you really understand where they're coming from, their experience, where they're starting, and also that you're not building, 12 or 15 different types of strategies and programs. They can see the through line. They can see the consistency that's happening throughout. And you are also going to find with allowing customization that you're actually probably going to see more consistent results because you have a through line of what everyone's doing, but people are allowing it to feel like it's theirs. It's not like I'm being handed something to believe in this and you'll succeed. You're really allowing them to find themselves within it. And so, because of that, you have the consistency of the framework, but the customization of allowing them to see themselves in it, which in turn creates a lot more connection to what it is that you're teaching and ultimately allows a lot more consistency. So, your team also needs this to be able to provide on your behalf. So, this is the other thing I want to say. If you are even considering co-coaches or co-facilitators or somebody to assist with delivery, please let this be your indicator that you cannot have, or you should not have, somebody inside of your offer to assist with delivery if you do not have a delivery framework. It means, and I will tell you this firsthand because I have gone through experiences where, very, very early in my journey, I was in an all women's program and I was passed off to a co-coach. And I remember this experience vividly because on one call with her, I would get one type of coaching. And it was like she would say, your strategy for the week is blue. And I'm like, okay, great. So I'd go do my blue strategy. And then I would talk to the co-coach, like, great, your strategy for this week is red. And I'd be like, what? Because one person would say one thing and the other person would say the other thing. Why'd this happen? Co-coaches are often off center, off beat with the original coach because there isn't a streamlined structure. There aren't decision trees. There aren't core frameworks that they're referencing and coaching you. They don't have tiers of evaluation of things that they're giving you as direction. So what it really ends up is it's a free for all. Whatever each coach decides to give you as advice, that's what they give you as advice. And this is also why those same programs that don't have this through line also have a lot of variety within their results. You've got one client who's with coach A and they're crushing and they're doing incredible within the program. And then you've got coach B over here and all of their clients seem to be struggling. And then the owner of the company is like, I can't figure out why this is happening. Oftentimes it has nothing to, do with other than the fact that maybe coach A is using intuition that happens to be more on beat and coach B is using intuition and theirs is maybe not as close in reference. The reality is, though, you don't want people, especially when you're having someone interact with your clients, you don't want people to be always operating from a custom type perspective. You want to make sure that when you give somebody, your client, and you're having someone to help you to scale and you're delegating, that you're doing so in a way that is streamlined and structured and most importantly ethical, so that the person who's going through doesn't feel like they're getting 15 different types of coaching at the same time. And I want to make it very clear, like, I believe in co-coaches when done effectively. I believe in co-coaches. I have peers that have co-coaches in their programs and they are incredible. Like, I would say probably in some of them, the co-coaches in the program are better than the coach themselves. Like, it's definitely something I will say I have seen do very well and be very effective. Now, it has to be done right. So that's why I think a lot of people, in my opinion, have this belief that like co-coaches are a bad thing. Co-coaches are not a bad thing inside of a program. Poorly trained, poorly structured programs with co-coaches are a recipe for disaster, because that is really each person having a free for all and no one really knowing what they're doing. So in that case, maybe you've been part of one of those experiences, which is kind of potentially what turned you off of the idea of co-coaches. But when we think about, step A, again, remembering or step number 1, remembering the spine, that's the structure, the framework, the thing that we're going to anchor into. 2 is asking yourself, how do you want to help people to integrate the customization? Is it through calls? Is it through templates? Like, how are we actually helping people to do that? And how are we using the structure in the sense of which part of the structure are you allowing customization and which part of the structure are you like, no, this is firm, it's a non-negotiable. Then you want to actually think about how are you structuring the offer itself. So this is really where delivery happens. So how you make it personal, even if it is a group style offering. So, for example, live coaching calls. One of the things that we do to allow with customization, ours is a hybrid, so it's not entirely group, so we do have one-on-one calls in ours. But if either or, if you're going to do it similar to mine as a hybrid, or if you want to have it all group, the great way that we find works for helping customization is hot seat coaching. It really allows people to come with the things that they are specifically working on, navigating, and producing. And it allows them to feel like they can get the advice for what they need for where they're at. They're not having to talk about something that someone else is talking about just because everyone's on the same blueprint. So they can come with their specific issues or with their specific topic and dive into that for themselves. I also find private feedback, so meaning one-to-one style feedback. So for us, we do things like sales call feedback. So if you have a sales call, I'll go through that and say, for your call, here's what I'd recommend for you. We also do project feedback. So basically, if you, let's just say, write a sales page using one of our structures, you can then send that to me and I will give you feedback on the copy, the structure, the strategy, and psychology around that sales page. It also could be, for example, DMs. We've had people who've shared DMs with us and said, hey, can you coach me on how to better, sell within these DM conversations? So that's also been something we've done. So it also allows people to feel like they themselves and their business can be seen. It's not like, these are the steps and go take it and run. We will go in and say, well, for your sales page, what I'd recommend is this. Or for your industry in the DMs, here's what I'd recommend. Or for your sales calls, you specifically need to focus on this, this, this. So we're giving personalized feedback, but again, anchoring it to our principles. So I find the private audits really do help with that customization. Slack. So we have one-on-one Slack support and group support. And so what we find is the Slack also allows people to ask personalized questions to what they're navigating and what's coming up. So like in a given week, you might have one girl who says, I got a speaking opportunity and has a question about pitching herself or pricing. The next person has a question about running the P&L that she wants for her margins she's looking for, which is financial. And then the next girl is coming to us saying, how do I increase retention? So they're all able to ask different types of questions for different stages of what, again, they're working on. And then the other thing I think is also great is looking at workshops. I find workshops have been really loved by our clients because the workshops are something that allow them integration, again, of the principles, but in a way that's custom to them. So one of the ones we did most recently in Accelerator is that we did a workshop where all the women brought their concepts for marketing. So basically, we had them use our principles and our frameworks to bring concepts to that meeting. And when we all got on the workshop, what we did together is we helped everyone to have creative ideas about how they could, through media, So through a, talking video, a series, all the different basically styles of media, we came up with media and creative ways to stand out in their industry for those concepts. So they basically brought, I want to talk about these three things. I want to do a mistakes post. We would talk about the media and the way that they could deliver that. But again, it's custom to them. So one person was a bookkeeper, the other one is a marketing strategist, and the other one was a social media manager. And so all of them are in different industries, and yet we're able to get custom ideas for each of them. So some agencies, some coaches, some consultants, some course creators all are getting ideas within this call. And that's because it was workshop, meaning it was integrated. It wasn't this big theory of a huge principle. And they're kind of like, okay, well, like, how does this make sense for me? Or what does this look like for me? They were able to find themselves within it. So what I find is with the supports like we have to high level summary it, we have an initial kickoff call that's a 1 hour kickoff with me. And that basically is to deep dive and build out their strategy. Then they have custom one-on-ones the top of every single month that they get. You've got, twice a week hot seat coaching, which is again more kind of one-to-one integration. You've got Slack, which is more one-on-one integration. And there's really all these places of customization. But even if you removed the one-on-one kickoff call and the one-on-one calls they get each month, you still have customization in everything being group. So you don't necessarily have to have it be a hybrid model in order to be able to see how people would get their stuff personally integrated. Now, often a question that I get though is that people will say, okay, well, how do I keep track of these clients that are all at different stages? This is where, if I'm going to be really honest, you need a client management system. You need to have something where you anchor into organizing what everybody's working on, because that really allows you to use your framework as the reference point for how someone is tracking their progress. So, some things that I do, I have kind of like client coaching notes. So, basically, at the end of our sessions, what I will do is I will take notes of what we worked on and also what we're basically looking at next. Our blueprint also helps with that. So the blueprint is literally like a 2-page document that is custom per person of their specific outlined blueprint and action steps. We also have our hot seat calls. So that on the hot seat calls, I'm also taking notes that mentally note for myself who's working on what resources maybe could someone benefit from seeing or getting, things like that. And I also find that, the client management helps you also really have a visual aid of how someone is spending their time in the program. So is somebody feeling like they're spending time on the same things over and over and over again, and they're kind of talking through the same things over and over again? Or are they finding that, they are moving pretty quickly through the curriculum? You can see, for example, if you talk to the same person for 6 weeks about the same topic, it might be time for you to kind of go back to the drawing board and say, okay, great. Why are we talking about this again? Like, what's the sticking point here? Let's get into this together. And I also find that you, inside of a program like this, will also find that by having it be able to be customized, you're also really able to use the supports this way to tailor to the needs of the group. So for us, we have a bi-weekly group training that we do. So every other week, I basically do like a new masterclass inside the program type of equivalent. And with those trainings or workshops, what I find is that because I'm able to have this customization aspect, I'm able to customize the content over and over and over again. Again, in contrast to a cookie cutter program, you might have, these are the 17 steps, and all you have is just tons and tons and tons of Q&A. Like, you don't really have a lot of customization because it's really, here's the curriculum, do you have a question? Here's the curriculum, do you have a question? And you feel like there's not really a lot of adapting to the group and what they're looking for or need, because everything has been structured around literally just follow the curriculum and integrate it. And I don't want to ask no questions and don't focus on anything else. So when we're looking at the idea, right, of trying to think about something that is, one to many and that helps to go scalable, but also customized, remember there's a couple core components. Stage 1, you have to have that framework. You have to have the phases, the pillars, the spine, which is the signature framework of your offer. 2, you have to ask yourself, what is non-negotiable? And then what can be variable? What can be customized? What are things that allow me to kind of find the client within the framework? And then 3rd is to then ask yourself the touch points, which is, how do you intend to use the delivery of the program to integrate that customization? So what's non-negotiable? What can be customized? And then how do you plan to use the support to customize it? That really are the series of the 3 buckets of questions that you have to be able to answer. Once you have those 3 phases, once you have those 3 steps, you will have a program or an offering, whether again, group and just entirely one to many, or if you have it more hybrid where it's one-on-one and group, it doesn't matter. Once you start to have those 2 pieces of clarity, or sorry, the 3 pieces of clarity and those 3 steps outlined, now we're cooking. Now we really have a overview of exactly what we need to build the actual offer. What I find instead is that people will build the offer, they never think about the structure or strategy around it, and then they end up with a lot of random resources, random trainings, none of which fit into each other, and you think, how does this all come together? And so that's really what I find is the core of a well-structured one-to-many offer. And I wanted to talk about this today because I think so many times when we look to scale, we kind of scale out what allowed us to scale in the first place, right? So I remember when I was even scaling my business, I had a lot of advice, which was like no custom, everything blueprint, everything cookie cutter, like that's it. And I remember at the beginning, I kind of didn't resonate with that because I thought, I don't I don't want to feel like a number in someone's business or in someone's program. So like why would these clients want to feel like a number? Like that doesn't make any sense. Why would they want to feel like they're in a production line? They don't have any extra thoughts or feelings or customization. Just follow the steps and don't ask questions. And I found that the more and more that I understood the cookie cutter or the blueprint model, the more and more I didn't like it because it made me feel like I was becoming a carbon copy of, truthfully, this is where the coaches who coach coaches things come from. We really are creating duplicates of us. And that's not what business coaching or your coaching, even if you have a fitness program, it doesn't matter. It's not about creating a mini you, and it's not about me creating a mini me, which is why we can help agencies and we can help food bloggers and we can help course creators and authors and podcast hosts and all these different people to grow their brands and business. And that's because the principles are the through line. They're the same. But it allows me to work with a variety of industries. And I realized the reason that the cookie cutter or the blueprint is so heavily emphasized, right? Is because we are told that that's the simplest. And frankly, it is. They're not wrong. Like when you go to certain places and you go in, I'm not sure if they, because I'm Canadian, I'm not sure if they have this in the States, but they have a company here, Harvey's. I think they have in the States, but Harvey's. And Harvey's allows you to customize the toppings on your burger. That's a very different experience than if you go to a McDonald's and you say, I want a Big Mac, right? There's like, here's your toppings, here you go. One is designed for customization, the other one is not. Subway is another great example of this model. You have the classic toppings that come on the sub, but you can also customize them if you'd like. You can see endless models of this, but you can also find endless models of the cookie cutter. And I think this is really a decision for you of what kind of business do you want to be? Because frankly, both of them are scalable. Both of them can work. Both of them can help you to have a massive business. So I don't want you to feel that by doing cookie cutter for whatever, reason, it means that you're more safe or that you're more scalable or that you can take on more clients. Both of them can serve endless amounts of clients. Both of them can serve people in a very different way. It's really about asking, what does that journey for you, for your offer, for your program really look like and how you want to design that? So I want this to be an invitation for you to maybe go through your own product. Maybe you're creating a product. Maybe you want to go through your own offer right now and say, do I feel like this has a structure? Do I have a strategy to what I'm doing? And do I feel like there's actually bones here of why I do what I do and how I do it? Because if not, you will see this show up in things like retention. You'll see it show up with people not feeling they're getting what they want out of the program. You'll see this in clients coming to you and feeling totally lost and not really sure what the heck's going on or how things work. You'll see this in the sense of your team feeling like they don't know what the heck to do. And also, you're going to feel frustrated because you're going to feel like as soon as I try to scale this thing, I feel like I'm getting pulled right back in and no one can do it like me. That is not true, but it is going to be felt because you don't have this type of structure established. So I will say this is something that I know, obviously, I usually teach this in a couple hours. And so this would not be something I would usually expect you to just kind of like know out the gate when it comes to how to build this. But I will say, if you are somebody who feels like you are hearing this today and you're like, I really need a new approach for my offer. I really need to like dial this in. Let this be your invitation. My DMs are always open. I would love to chat through with you. If you have any questions, any curiosities, slide into my DMs. I would love to see how I can best support you with this because it is something that is pretty robust that helps to obviously have a second set of eyes to say, okay, here's basically what I'm seeing you do. But this is also, by the way, exactly what we do for clients. Our program is structured this way. And also, we help other clients to structure their programs this way. So, if you want help with doing that, you guys know where to find me. But I also just want to take a second to say a massive thank you. We have, as of recently, been just really connecting with people like yourself who listen to this show every single week. So if you are one of our OG listeners and you know who you are, thank you for tuning in every week. It means the world to us. And I just want to say, myself, obviously, I'm the face that you see each week or the person you listen to in your ears every single week. But we have an amazing team of women behind this podcast who I will just say are truly the thing that's making this whole thing what it is. And so all of the editing and the incredible guests and all of that is really very much a team effort. So I just want to say a massive thank you from us and from myself for just all the love and all the support that you guys are giving to this podcast. With all of the support, it really does allow us to be able to get even better and, even more targeted guests on for you to talk about the things that you want to know, to create resources for you that are going to be helpful for you and for your journey, to create community for you of other women just like yourself, and just so much more. So I just want to say a massive thank you because this would not be what it is and wouldn't be becoming what it is without your support. And we couldn't do any of it without you. So just want to say a massive thank you for tuning in every single week. It means the world to me and to us. And I hope today was helpful. I hope you are going to go audit the crap out of your program now and that you're going to potentially take this one to many and make it scalable in a way that really feels like it's you. So hope today was helpful. I will see you on the next episode. And as always, stay ambitious.